Hi, and welcome to What Teacher Leaders and Coaches Need to Know About UDL. I'm Suzanne. I've been a classroom teacher as well as a coach. I have been in Louisiana and Virginia, and I have a background in math, ELA, and special education. But today I'm sharing the work of a much larger team that donates their time and energy free of charge to their peers. So if you see something today that you like and you're trying to get away from vendor products and build on a network of people across the country, reach out and we would be happy to share our materials with you. So today I'm going to talk about the Universal Design for Learning Instructional Playbook. And so I want you to think about UDL as a lens. So sometimes we hear about, oh, I do UDL in my school. I do UDL in my classroom. So let's reframe that one for just a minute. So we don't do UDL. Let's think differently about, I see the world through a lens that is built on the Universal Design for Learning framework. So everybody picture having some amber sunglasses in your hands and you put them on and suddenly the whole world is tinted with a golden glow. So UDL lens is how you see the world. So when you see a problem of practice or you're faced with a challenge or a barrier, you think in terms of, hey, how can I use the UDL guidelines to solve that? So we're never doing UDL. We're thinking about the world through a UDL lens. So I want to talk about that because as coaches and leads, we're expected to support our colleagues in the right moves to reduce barriers for student learning. But what are the right moves? And that's a hard thing. So we're going to talk about how the UDL guidelines can help us be more effective coaches and teacher leaders, and then figure out some next steps for anybody who's in that role. So what should you even do with this video? Well, if I were a coach, I would add it to my coaches meeting, which might be once a month or once a week, or maybe you don't have one and today is the first day you're thinking about having a coaches meeting. Or you could just add it to a leadership meeting and say, hey, everybody, why don't you listen to this as you drive home, but don't crash the car, or watch it before we meet, and then we can chat about whether or not we think creating a playbook or thinking about the UDL lens would help us reach our vision. So this is a video. Go ahead and take a screenshot of this so you can get the resources. You can get to this slide deck at tinyurl.com/AMLE playbook UDL, or you could scan the QR code. And you can get to our sample UDL instructional playbook by going to tinyurl.com/AMLE UDL playbook, or use the QR code. So what you have in front of you are the UDL guidelines. So this is the 2.0. There's also a 3.0, looks a little bit different, but it's the same information. We prefer the 2.0. So if you'd like to look up the UDL guidelines 2.0, you can download them from CAST. So what is the UDL framework for teaching and learning? Well, it's based on neuroscience, and there's a lot of resources online that we can hook you up with to learn a little bit more about that. But in a nutshell, there's 3 brain networks. From the left-hand side on your screen, there's the recognition network, where we want to make sure that students can access multiple means of representation so that they can understand what they're taking in. In the center, you'll see the strategic brain network, where we want to provide multiple means of action and expression so that students can engage in their learning. And then on the right-hand side, we have the affective brain network, where we want to provide multiple means of engagement so the kids will actually engage in whatever's going on. We want to make sure our students are motivated, engaged. And you look at the bottom and you'll see that if we do all of those things, and the colors will saturate on your screen, we'll have resourceful, knowledgeable learners, we'll have strategic, goal-directed learners, and we'll have purposeful, motivated learners. Now, in the middle grades, we're not going to have all of those things all the time because our students are developing, but that's our goal over time. So the UDL framework reduces barriers for student learning by helping us think through where are the biggest challenges that we're having and how can we provide scaffolds and supports and best first instruction to overcome those barriers. So one of the things we want to think about is, as coaches and teacher leaders and administrators, we want to think through some instructional moves ahead of time that are the biggest bang for our buck. It's the thing that makes our school, our department, our grade level, our grade level. Some of us kind of think about that as branding. Others of us think that this is the scaffold set, the toolkit that supports students in becoming expert learners. Any of those things are fine. But what we're going to want to do is think through, how do we put all of that stuff in one place so we're singing from the same sheet of music? And so, what we think is coaches support teachers in using the right moves to reduce barriers for student learning by having an instructional playbook. It gives a one-stop shop to make sure that the things that make our school, that get our students to be resourceful, knowledgeable learners, strategic, goal-directed learners, purposeful, motivated learners, that help us see the world through the UDL lens. These are the moves, and they live in a playbook. So, as an analogy, if you take your, let's say you are fortunate to own a BMW. You've got this gorgeous car, you've been wanting it your whole life, and there you are cruising down the road, and you realize, hey, I need to take this thing in. It's got something wrong with it. Not a big deal, but you're traveling, and so you take it into a BMW shop. Those folks don't do whatever they want. They pull out the BMW guidebook online. They plug into the BMW computer online. They know what they're doing because there's certain things that are the right moves for your BMW. They know the sticking points. They know the recalls. They know the right stuff to make sure that you get out of there with your awesome wheels and good things happen to you and you are a proud BMW owner. Now, I'm not working for BMW, and I'm sure the same thing happens for Honda and any other car company, but we need to think, everybody uses a playbook in their life. How do we make sure that our school, our department, our grade level has a playbook that gets our students to where we want to be proud of them, they want to be proud of themselves, and they feel expertise? So here we've got a sample UDL instructional playbook. It's just an example of things that we've put together for you all to play around with. So just take a minute to go to tinyurl.com/AMLE UDL playbook, and then we'll talk about it. All right, so an instructional playbook, like I said with the BMW example, is just a place to put the things that you have as your go-to instructional moves. Not everybody is going to use everything all the time, and the thing that's most important is to think through, where are your frustrations in your school, and what are the amazing things that you should capitalize on? So think through your best folks. What are you doing in your classroom? What are you doing in your department or your grade level where you're like, that's the thing? We all need to be doing those things, or most of us need to be doing those things, because that's the thing that makes students successful. It overcomes the barriers. And so you want to have a conversation as a leadership team, as a coaching team, and you want to think through, what's a handful of things that are going to get you to where you need to be? And then here's the most important part. Once you figure it out, look on your screen right now. If you're driving, don't, just listen. I don't want you to crash the car. You're going to share this playbook with your coaches, your admins, your lead teachers, whoever takes that coaching role. And by the way, an assistant principal is often in a coaching role. A principal is often in a coaching role. A department chair is often in a coaching role. New teacher mentors are often in coaching roles. Okay, but you're not going to share this playbook with teachers. Instead, whoever's in that coaching role is going to select some one-pagers to share with the teachers. And there's reasons for that, and we'll get into it. So on your screen, you have a table of contents. So thinking through, in this example school, we put together an example for you. There's two big things that are the focus area for this middle school right now. One is community building, and the second is instruction. So if you look at community building, you'll see that there's 4 instructional moves that are most important, and they come from one evidence-based resource, and you'll see that if you go into the example. So we don't make this stuff up on our own. What we're doing is we're curating the most important things for our instructional model through our UDL lens, which is why we don't do UDL. We see the world through UDL, making sure that we use what we know about neuroscience to get students to their expert learner goals. So we might need an attention-getting signal in a classroom, and you all know a classroom that doesn't have an attention-getting signal because you can hear it down the hall. Or we might need to give precise directions because there's a lot of teacher talk, but there's not a lot of student action that's matching that teacher talk. Students aren't on task. Positive narration is a way to get over that nagging problem. And then a lot of folks are focused on building relationships. So let's define what that really is. And then if you switch over to the instruction section in the example we gave you, wait time's super important and we forget about that and then we overload students cognitively. Notice and wonder, turn and talk, think pair. Like those are some basics that you would normally do maybe in your first 20 days. But there are some people who just never got a chance to try them out. And so that's something that you could choose for coaching. All right, let's look at an example. So let's say I'm getting ready to meet with a peer or I'm an assistant principal or a coach, and there's somebody who I planned on having a conversation with because they came to me and asked a question. And so how do I get ready? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a couple of things that match what I think that teacher is asking for. So I'm going to bring them two options to choose from. So in this example, on the left, I have a little screenshot of a cold call, no opt-out method. And then on the right, I have think pair or think draw or think write. So variations on a think pair do. All right. And so I'm going to bring just those two options. So there's some voice and choice in the person who I'm coaching, but it still matches the instructional model. It still matches what we want to see in our grade level or our department or our school. So, by the way, we know from many experiences in our life, you don't want a lot more than two options when you're sitting down to have a conversation and you're busy. So, a couple things. One, you don't want no options because anyone who's ever tried to dress a toddler understands that if you don't give them an option of you can have the pink outfit or the blue outfit, there's going to be a tantrum. Okay. But you also don't want to let them choose anything or it's going to be flip flops and a tutu to go to a wedding. All right, so that's first. Second is if you've ever gone home and said, hey, let's go out to dinner. And where would you like to go? And the answer was, I don't care, you choose. At some point in time, you just don't want to eat anymore because it's too many options. But if they say, do you want Italian or do you want Mexican? I can deal with that. I can make a decision from two things. So that's the reason I say two options, but many people also do three. So let's look at this first one. And we won't look at both. We just want you to see the structure of what one of the items in a playbook would look like. So, in one sentence, using cold call as a whole school routine establishes that students should always be ready to share their thoughts and participate, and that to be in class is to be part of the conversation. And I can already hear one of my teachers saying to me, hey, isn't cold call mean? Isn't that bullying people? So let's dig into the research connection. If you go into Teach Like a Champion, or if you go into some of the Fisher and framework, you'll see that this isn't bullying. What it is, if you jump down to what's the point, is it's part of my job as a teacher to message, I expect you to participate when I call on you, but I'm doing it because I really want to hear what you're thinking. Caring about what a student is thinking is a reminder that they matter. And it's inclusive. We have to remember that wanting to be called on and being willing to raise your hand are two different things. Having worthwhile thoughts and offering to share them are different things. And so I want everyone to think when I'm working with them that cold call and no opt out is actually an attendance intervention. When you're not here and you don't talk, we miss you. It's important for you to be here. But we've got to overcome that internal dialogue that some of our teachers have of, it's so mean to ask a student to talk when they don't raise their hand. I wouldn't like that. And we need to change that expectation. So then if you scroll down in the document, you'll see that there's a handout that's actually a slide deck of how we use cold call and no opt-out in the classroom. So that's an additional resource. And then how students use it, they use it to actively participate. Most important is this checklist right here. So this is how a teacher's going to know that they're doing it right. So they know that they have to prepare questions ahead of time because this is a real tough thing to do off the cuff. They have to keep track of who has or hasn't been called on or who has or hasn't talked. And that could be a roster checklist. That could be those popsicle sticks. It really doesn't matter. They have to learn how to read the room, how to call on students warmly. And by the way, you can always give them a warning like, hey, I'm going to ask this person, then this person, then this person, but I'll also ask some others. That's a heads up for some of ours. Using a question, pause, and name method here, or a turn and talk for a little bit of cognitive lift ahead of time so the cognitive load goes down. And then if you go all the way down to the bottom, you'll see that in addition to the checklist, there's some videos so you can see what cold call looks like and you can hear what students think about cold call. So Here's what we would do next. So once I put my two options in front of them and I say, hey, do you like the sound of cold call and no opt out? Or do you like the sound of think pair and then draw or write? They might say, oh, I really like cold call. I feel like I already do some of the other think pair and we could talk about that another time. So then I'm going to engage in my impact cycle coaching. Not the focus for right now. There's a link on your screen. You are welcome to go and look at that, as we just use the gym night model of first we identify what somebody wants to do, and then we learn about it, and we're doing that using this checklist, and then we might model the two of us just without kids around, trying it out. Like, what might it look like for me to walk around the room while I'm doing this? What might it look like for me to have this roster checklist? And then we'll go ahead and assign it like, whoo, you're going to try it out and I'm going to check in with you and it's going to be great. And we're going to learn from it because that's what improve is all about. We might go through another cycle where we chat about it and try it out again. Or if something really isn't a good match, we might trade it in and try something else. So maintaining a UDL playbook helps coaches keep their teachers aligned to the model and goals as teachers build their own strategy toolkits. But what we like about this is it's a way to do that universal design for learning framework discussion with folks that doesn't overwhelm them. You don't need to differentiate everything all the time. Most people are not special snowflakes. What we need to know is we've got to scaffold and support students' brain networks using neuroscience by choosing carefully the right instructional moves. And one of the challenges in the world right now is it's just so easy for folks to jump online, Google something, find something that they can buy maybe for $1.99 for a unit plan, and then just chunk through all those activities. But that might not really be the set of instructional moves your child needs in the classroom. Some of those students might struggle. So what do you do right now? So you could pull together your coaching peers and plan which strategies to include in a playbook. You could start with ours and add as you go. We actually have a book about this, so you could get that off Amazon or get it from the public library or reach out to us and we'll help you out. And then the teachers and coaches in that book are happy to provide you any PD that you'd like. So we would be happy to talk to your coaches and leaders. And we don't charge a fee. We're just peers. So feel free to contact me at the Google form below to work through your next steps as a leader or coach, because we think we're all in this together. So if you reach out to tinyurl.com, contact Crowsdale. We're happy to help. I hope you have an awesome time talking through instructional playbooks and UDL.